Recording.
Good afternoon, Mr. White. First of all, we want to thank you for inviting us into your house. It is a real pleasure for us. As we know, you are the former chief of US Secret Service for Eastern Europe, based in Romania, and you've worked in Romania for 5 years, so meaning that you've had a lot of time to get to know Romania.
That's correct.
So, Mr. White, we are curious to know your opinion as a former US official who worked in Romania for 5 years about the institutional system in Romania and if Romania had any evolution this year. And for this, we want to ask you to allow us to put some questions.
Sure.
Mr. White.
Sure.
Okay, now I will put you the first question. Mr. White, were certain voices in Romania that try to discredit you, saying you are a former official dismissed by the system and that your declaration has no solid base. And there are also voices, such as US Embassy, stating that your declarations regarding Romania are entirely yours and that you are no longer embassy employee. So I think it is your right to clarify that statement to your address. So what is your opinion about this, Mr. White, please?
Well, thank you for that question, and I think it brings us to a place where we can have a substantive conversation about it. Number one, they stated the obvious that I'm no longer an employee of the American Embassy. That's obviously true. And the second part is they made an effort to distance themselves from me or from my statements. And anybody, including Americans or Romanians, will look at that and say, wait a second. All they did is try to distance themselves from what I said, but they didn't drill down on what I said, why I said it, and if it has any merit. So that in and of itself is very revealing. I stand by my statements because they're based on the truth. So when the embassy or when the Romanian leadership will duck and dodge the question and say, oh, well, he's no longer employed here, he's no longer associated with the embassy, that doesn't address the facts. That just simply they tried to put distance between myself and the embassy. Because when you're telling the truth, they have every right to challenge it. They didn't challenge it because you can't challenge it. It's based on facts. So they were very quick to try and dismiss my comments and distance themselves from me, while at the same time they made no effort to address the facts that I laid out. So of course, it was just an empty response. Very irresponsible.
I understand. So it's your personal opinion.
Could you please speak up?
So it's your personal opinion. It's your right to say, as a person who was an official, to say what he believed about Romania.
Well, let's keep in mind, whatever I say, it has to be based on a set of facts or circumstances that would lead one to a reasonable conclusion. Otherwise, I'm just concocting, or I'm fabricating, or I'm making up stuff. That doesn't make sense. So, of course, they never addressed what I said because, well, I don't want to know. I don't want to say why. I just say that it's painfully obvious that they never addressed anything I said. They just said, oh, he doesn't work here anymore. That's a poor response.
Yes.
That's not very responsible, and you never address the facts. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say, hey, they're ducking and dodging the facts. So a first grader can say, oh, he doesn't work here anymore. That's your response to the very substantive facts that I laid out there. And the only thing you can come back with is, oh, he doesn't work here anymore.
So you are saying
That's pretty
gave
weak.
An explanation.
Yeah, it was a
Yes.
weak. They didn't respond. They just say he doesn't work here anymore.
Yes.
Where a homeless guy on the streets can tell you, hey, Darren doesn't work there anymore.
Of course.
That's very empty.
We understand.
Yes.
Mr. White, together Washington and Brussels have nudged successive Romanian governments to bring corruption under control. Were they correct to do this? What has gone wrong and what has gone right? Please
Well,
tell us your opinion.
when you say that Brussels and Washington came together to make a positive impact on corruption in Romania, is that what they are? Is that the question, or is that the conclusion? Do we believe that Washington and Brussels were successful in stamping out corruption in Romania? Is that the question?
This is the question, yes. If they try to bring corruption under control, these two forces,
Yeah.
Washington and Brussels.
Well, I don't know the exact components of Brussels. If it is a international group or an international coalition of partners, that's a good start. But if you look at the current conditions in Romania, it might call into question the effectiveness of whatever plan they have in place. I'm not sure that their plan goes far enough, deep enough, and it is not comprehensive enough. So one has to be careful about concluding that Washington and Brussels have made the impact that they've intended. So maybe the jury is still out on that one. I would be cautious to take a look at where we were when they implemented whatever plan they have and where we are now.
So there was no evolution.
I think the jury is still out. I don't know. I can tell you that the current climate in Romania would certainly suggest that there's a lot of work to be done. Despite whatever Washington and Brussels may have attempted to do, but we have to weigh in on where we are versus what Washington and Brussels had hoped to do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. White, as a senior U.S. law enforcement officer, how do you assess the level of corruption in Romania? Is the situation better or worse than when you first arrived in Bucharest?
Well, first, let me just tell you that my 5 years in Romania, I've had the wonderful pleasure and opportunity to work with some of the utmost professional and talented folks. Unfortunately, they were and still are outnumbered by the vast, deeply rooted corruption in Romania. And it's saddening because each day another prominent member of the government or a person of influence or a person of wealth is being arrested and investigated, detained, and it's just this vicious cycle one day after the next. This minister, this deputy, this senator, and it's just going on and on and on. And you know what? Unfortunately, when you see high-profile arrests like that, it's usually something that's retaliatory. In other words, somebody is taking more money than the other criminal or the other member of your parliament, and now they're getting jealous because they're extorting money from this company. And so it's sort of a tit for tat. This person's getting too much money. This person's taking too much. So when you see those high-profile arrests, it's usually something retaliatory because it's a matter of influence peddling. When somebody says, wait a minute, this guy is being greedy. He's taking too much of the fraudulent funds or the fruits of the crimes. So they'll set out an investigation to slow that person's cash flow down, to try to balance the scales in terms of the level of corruption money that's coming in. So usually when you see that, and I'm not saying that the arrests are not legitimate, but the reason behind the arrest is usually retaliatory because somebody got mad that one criminal member of your parliament is taking more money than the other.
Oh, so it's your opinion. Your opinion is a personal vendetta.
Yes.
Right? No.
It has very little to do with law enforcement and the rule of law and equal justice and equal protection under the law. No, it doesn't. What it has to do with is that somebody is taking more money than the other. Therefore, there's going to be a retaliatory investigation as opposed to let's hold everybody accountable. No, you hold people accountable based on their favor in the eyes of the powers to be. The people who are in power, if they think you're taking too much, then they'll do things to kind of bring you under control. And let me just follow up by saying, um, poor people in Romania don't have a fighting chance. It's the people of wealth who steal, rob, lie, fraud, bribery, extort money, and it's a constant thing. So this idea about progress, let's look at a definition of progress, because a poor person in Romania doesn't have a fighting chance, and the wealthy criminals, a lot of them live where I used to live in Stajati. So when you see poor people in a farm in Buzău who are working tirelessly 20 hours a day just to get by, and then you see the criminals sitting by the poolside at Stajati just letting the dirty money flow in, that's very, very disheartening. And so the poor person in Romania doesn't have a fighting chance. Meanwhile, super rich criminals, they get a tap on the wrist, they bribe the judge, they bribe the prosecutor, and they pay their criminal defense attorney lots of money, and they walk away and go back to the clubhouse or to the country club or to their $300,000, 300,000 euro car and drive away. You call that progress? It's not progress. It's that vicious cycle of corruption. And the only time somebody gets in trouble or gets arrested is because they're taking more money than, say, one of the other members of parliament, and he's getting ahead of the other one, and they get jealous, and then they launch an investigation.
Mr. White, when you've worked in Romania for 5 years, have you tried to do something regarding these problems you said about it?
Oh, yeah. You know, when somebody presents a problem, anybody can cite the problem. Where the rubber meets the road is, how do you come up with solutions? And my approach to bringing solutions is not to sit there in that embassy and discuss theories.
You got any reaction from?
Yeah, what my partners in law enforcement and prosecutors in Romania, what they noticed about me probably most, and this is really not about me, but you asked me a question about my approach while working very hard and diligently during my term in Romania, is Romania's got 41 counties, and I've been to 35 of them. Most Romanians haven't gone that far. Certainly the members of that embassy didn't come close to going that far. So the Americans or the Romanians didn't take the steps and the efforts that I did, because it's evident. And so when you see me in places, I'm looking to make a difference. You don't get to know the Romanian landscape by standing in the embassy discussing theories and talking about bringing more money. Unfortunately, too often the Americans think that just throw money at the problem. No, there's plenty of money flowing in Romania. It's just dirty money. It's criminal money. We need to get out there and find out what's making things go right, what's making things go wrong, and you have to get out there and make the effort to meet the people and find out what it is that's going right and what it is that's going wrong. Fix that which is wrong and continue to do good on that that's going well. So you can't do that by sitting in the embassy reading a book.
Yes.
So when people say, oh, he doesn't work here anymore, you know, that's pretty obvious. But when I did work there, I didn't sit in that embassy. In addition to that, I had responsibilities in 7 other countries. So despite the fact that I was a regional agent in charge, I didn't allow that to cripple my efforts. So I just had to do more, a lot more than the others, and I still made a bigger presence than most Romanians and all of the Americans. So that's where the rubber meets the road when you talk about how I attempted to make a difference. We want to partner up with the prosecutors in Romania, partner them up with the prosecutors in the United States, as well as the Romanian National Police with national police entities in the United States, and even to the point of attaching a string between the American judges and the Romanian judges. And to a large extent, we did that. We brought in corporate partners like American Express, Western Union, eBay, Microsoft, MoneyGram, and they were our corporate partners who were actually able to travel with us throughout Romania, explaining to the judges, the prosecutors, and the national police what it takes to put together a coalition of law enforcement, corporate, academia, bring all these entities together to form a task force to combat cybercrime in Romania.
So you try to improve their skills and their knowledge in what regards the fight against corruption. But in your opinion, have been any positive results after these trainings?
Well, you can train, you can coordinate, you can bring together a task force, you can do all these things. You can let the judges meet the judges in Romania meet the judges in the United States, prosecutors in Romania meeting prosecutors in the United States. That's great. But at the end of the day, you're going to need the leadership to support, to follow up on prosecutions, really being aggressive with asset forfeiture. We brought in forensics, financial specialists, financial analysts, asset forfeiture specialists, money laundering specialists. But when we brought in these tools and assets to give to our Romanian partners, the upper echelon, they basically rejected it because that cuts into their cash flow. So the corruption is so deep in Romania, they knew that we were bringing the right tools and the right assets, but it was quietly but effectively rejected because the people of influence in Romania are on the take. The judges, the prosecutors, your members of parliament, they don't like it when I tell the truth. So they'll sling mud and cast doubt towards me based on these types of interviews. But they never come back to you and say, he's wrong, or there's no truth to what he's saying. It's painfully obvious that what I'm saying is correct, not because I say it, because it's just a fact. They know it, but they want to hush-hush about it. And let's move on. Let's keep the cash flow coming. And by the way, Western countries are the main targets of this cyber criminal activity. So all that money is coming back into Romania. It's going back into the Romanian economy. And it's going into the pocket of corrupt, crooked judges, prosecutors, and members of your parliament, and high-ranking police members. So what is the incentive for the Romanians to accept our asset forfeiture programs, our money laundering programs, the way we track illicit funds and dirty money that's coming into people in majority, into your parliament, and to your leadership, and to the judges, and to prosecutors? They know all that money is coming back to them. They don't want to accept these programs and accept our support because that cuts their cash flow. So they'll sit there and pretend we love this partnership, this is great, and say, well, let's implement this. And all of a sudden, that whole conversation comes to a stop. So when you ask me about the current climate, when you ask me about progress, corruption is still running deep. And as long as the cash is flowing into the pockets of corrupt leaders, corrupt judges, politicians, high-ranking police members, across the board, nobody in Romania is going to want to cut that dirty money flowing into their pockets. Because you got to remember, as long as the crime is going high, their income is high. If you cut that crime, you're going to cut their income. So we're being honest. And you know what? Not a single person in the Romanian government anywhere can come back and say, hey, wait a second. He's right. We need to cut fraud here. We need to cut the corruption here. That means cutting their cash. They'll talk to you all day and give you comfort talk. But when you start messing with their cash flow, they're not going to have that. So we can have these comfort conversations. But at the end of the day, where the rubber meets the road is, what are you doing? Effectively, what are you doing to cut the corruption? Meanwhile, the poor are getting poorer, and their struggle is becoming more intense. And that 5% of the Romanian population that's sitting out there at that country club, they have a great life. And you know what? The poor people in Romania, you don't see wealthy Romanians trying to help them. There's an international coalition of people who are trying to help the poor people in Romania. And that's what's really disappointing to me, because the Romanians who are in a position of wealth and influence, the only people they want to help is themselves. And they want to try to get richer and wealthier with more influence. But the poor people in Romania are being helped by people outside of the borders of Romania. And they'll just give you a shrug. Ah, okay. And part of that is the Americans' fault. Why continue to pour aid in there when they're not even trying to help themselves? Well, the Americans are saying those poor Romanians don't have a fight. They can't fight because they don't have a voice. And people at that country club at Stajati, they don't give a damn about the poor people there. So you got people outside of Romania's borders, and they'll tell you, let the Americans take care of it. That's not leadership coming from the American embassy. So when you got a government that doesn't care about its own, and they go, oh well, let's let the British, let's let the French, let's let the Italians, let's let the Americans, they'll take care of it. Let's just go to the country club. Meanwhile, your roads are falling apart and buildings are falling down, but things are thriving in Stajati. That little 5% super wealthy criminals. And you know what? If people disagree with what I say, come back with a counter argument saying and demonstrate to me or to the international community, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. So they can't. Oh, he doesn't work here anymore. That's an empty answer. So, or the Romanians might say, oh, he's bitter about something. No, don't blame it on Darren White. Get off your rear end and make a difference. So it's not about me. I'm not struggling to have a voice or to be heard in Romania. But what about the poor people in Romania? You know, you go to Stajati and all those super wealthy criminals there. You ask them, what about those poor people? Well, what about them? We don't. Let's let the Americans take care of it. Let's let the Germans take care of it. Let the Brits take care of it. Meanwhile, the dirty money is flowing. Now, the only way you get their attention is if you are a threat to cut off the dirty money that's flowing in. And then all of a sudden, they say, hey, stop, let's be serious here. Yes. And so if the leadership of that embassy, or the lack thereof, of the American embassy are standing on the sidelines, that means that you're part of the problem. So let's be honest, let's be fair, let's be very direct. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. If the leadership at that American embassy in Bucharest is standing on the sideline going, well, you know, you can't come back and say, he doesn't work here anymore. That's not addressing the problem. So one has to not allow them being the American embassy, and hopefully there'll be some competent, reliable, effective leadership coming in after January the 20th. I think that the incoming administration will be less tolerant and more actively involved in what goes on in Romania and a lot of other places. So strong leadership from the part of the Americans, holding the Romanians accountable instead of standing on the sidelines hoping that things get better. You can't hope. That's not leadership. So be firm, have a firm plan, and be very direct and hold people accountable. Don't, you know how corrupt things are. You know where the money is going. You know who's getting the money. We need to clamp down on that. And I'm talking about from a leadership standpoint on the part of the Americans. Remember, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. There's no gray area there. So right now, the lack of leadership in that embassy indicates that they're part of the problem, because it's certainly not part of the solution.
So this is your opinion about the procedure we must take to fix the situation, to prevent the future problems, you know?
Well, you got to go to the highest parts of the Romanian government and make it abundantly clear and demonstrate to them, the leadership of Romania, hey, we see what's going on. Enough. And we can push political buttons, economic buttons, and other assets that the Romanians are dependent on to make it abundantly clear that we mean business. You can't lead by standing on the sidelines. You can't. And if you're not very firm and very direct, you're going to get run over in Romania, especially in Romania and other places. They're not going to hear you until you prove that you mean business. And if you have to do it with an iron fist and an iron hammer, a big sledgehammer, then sometimes that's the only way people will listen, because they won't take you as being serious if you are too polite.
So we need a serious enforcement.
No doubt. And you know what? Hopefully, there was a campaign, and I don't want to get into political stuff here, but there was a campaign slogan that talked about draining the swamp. Part of leadership,
This Romania.
part of that swamp might be in the embassy in Romania, because that's part of the swamp that needs to be drained. Once you drain the swamp and get in really rock solid, strong leadership, then you're making progress. Then the Romanians will know that you mean business. Right now, if fraud and corruption is running rampant, once again, you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. I don't see us coming up with many solutions right now from an American standpoint. People look up to the Americans for strong, decisive, competent leadership. You're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. I don't see many solutions coming from, and you know what? I'm not here to take sides and say, I know the Romanians are not doing their part. Why would you have to force the leadership of a country that was so depressed under communism, and now that you got those shackles and those chains off of you, you're going deeper and deeper into corruption. And so why are your international partners having to force you to do what's right? That's sort of an oxymoron, where you're telling people right from wrong. You don't have to tell the Romanians right from wrong. They know right from wrong. But why is corruption so deep if they know right from wrong? And it's coming from the highest levels of your government. There are people in your government that are being arrested on a regular basis, and they have high-ranking positions. And you got to say why. And those are retaliatory arrests. Think if they did an outright fair law enforcement criminal investigations. There'd be a lot of people arrested there.
So in your opinion, actually, our anti-corruption battle has itself been corrupted.
Well, your anti-corruption battle, that's like saying you want the criminals to police the criminals. That's
the dog was
no, that's a prescription for failure. I mean, obviously, that's like telling me to go investigate my brother. I'm going to come back and find him guilty right away. No, you can't do that. So the integrity and the subjectivity, it's not there because it's corrupt. So you can't have criminals investigating criminals. So when I give straight talk like this, people in Romania get mad because they don't want to hear the truth. So they'll find a way to try to discredit me. Meanwhile, they say absolutely nothing about corruption. I guarantee you, if this plays on Romanian media, not one person, and I've said this before, and all they do is sling mud and cast doubt at me, but not one person will come forward and say, hey, look, he's right. Here's the solution. One of them was put out of office because of massive protests, because of a blatant failure in his leadership. Not one person can come back and say, hey, we got solutions for corruption and fraud in Romania. Not one person. But they'll sling all kind of mud on me because I'm speaking out against it. If I'm wrong, prove I'm wrong. But you can't deny that fraud and corruption is running rampant in the highest pockets of the Romanian government. And the Americans are standing on the sidelines. That means that you're part of the problem. So let's be fair here. There's enough blame to go around, but we just need some strong leadership to get in there and make sure we hold people accountable and move forward in helping the poor people, helping the economy, and then bringing back the integrity and the in the eyes of the international community, bring back credibility to Romania. Because when you mention Romania in the international community, they think of fraud, they think of corruption, bribery, cybercrime. We need to change that. And you change that through the right leadership and the right partnership, holding Romania accountable, because Romania is just going to keep doing fraud and corruption if they don't have the international community holding them accountable. Bring Germany in. Bring the UK. Bring the United States. Western powers may have to be more forceful in holding Romania accountable. Right now, they go, no, we can do this because there are no consequences for what we do because the system protects them because all of their friends are taking money to keep them safe. The cyber criminals say, hey, let's go set up camp in Romania because it's the easiest way to do business and you can bribe your way out of it if you get caught. And everybody will sit there and shrug and say, well, that's just the way it is. No. What about the poor people who are struggling? They don't care. So Americans care more about the poor people in Romania than the Romanians do. Just let the Americans take care of it. You don't think that's a problem? Well, those poor people need a voice. They need to have equal protection under the law. There needs to be rule of law. So the poor people in Romania, they're the ones that are in prison. I'm not saying they don't belong there, but what about the people who can just bribe their way, give judges money, give prosecutors money, give the police money, and walk away? Or they'll go to prison for a cup of coffee. They go, oh, they really punished him. Come on, let's be realistic. And you know what? When I make comments like this, you get the shrug. We're not shrugging anymore. We need leadership to hold Romania accountable because they try to paint me as some angry person that's been dismissed, but they never addressed the problem. Not one person. You can play this interview over and over again, and they'll take little snippets to try to take shots. And go, what are you doing to fix the problems in Romania? How are you helping the poor? I'll give you an example. There's a young lady that's running a program over in Romania to shelter. She runs a shelter for bruised and battered Romanian women. This is how sad it is. So an American who lives in Romania, she's been there probably 20 years, running a shelter for bruised and battered Romanian women. For Romania. The thugs in Romania told her that she needed to pay them money to keep her project open, to keep that safe house open.
Can be functioning.
Yeah, they came to lean on her to extort money from her because she was helping bruised and battered Romanian women. She went to the Romanian police and they gave her the shrug. I thought my head was going to explode. And unless you pay people money, she's over there to try to help Romanian women. And the thugs came and started leaning on her for money. Where is the leadership? In the U.S., we would throw them in jail in 3 seconds. But they're connected to some other thugs who are taking money in so positions of influence.
Between them.
Yes.
There is no way to...
because they're not interested in putting these thugs in prison because it cuts off their cash flow. Yes. And you know what? As many times as people are going to try to sling mud and cast doubt at me, not one will come up and say, wait a second, we need to follow up on this. We need to get more dirty money. And you know what? That's part of the problem. So maybe they're comfortable blaming me. Maybe they're comfortable saying, well, he doesn't work here anymore. How's that part of a solution? That is so empty and irresponsible. I guess they'll say, hey, he's just some bitter guy that has some strange illusion that corruption is running rampant in Romania. So maybe it's all my fault. Maybe I'm reaching for stuff that makes absolutely no sense. But that poor lady was afraid that she was going to have to shut down. And there was no one to turn to. You know why? The people she needed to turn to are the ones that are benefiting from this blackmail and extortion. So of course they didn't want to listen. Thank God the ambassador's wife got involved and brought that lady some aid so she could continue to help bruised and battered Romanian women. And they would come in and try to squeeze this poor lady for money, and she had nowhere to turn. They ought to arrest every last one of the whole police chain of command because that's who is responsible. But you know what? No one's going to say anything about this. They'll just give you the shrug. And that's the lack of leadership. That's the lack of holding Romania accountable. That is just, and it makes me, we wouldn't be doing this interview if I didn't care. I'd just be out there walking my dog. So there's a reason why I'm taking time out of my own personal time to sit down and discuss with you what's important. And it's still important to me. That should tell you something not only about me, but about what's right. And I could just stay on the sidelines and just remain a private citizen. Once again, you're either part of the problem, part of the solution. I'd like to be a part of the solution if I'm given the opportunity. People know my reputation. I'm not saying they have to like me and invite me to their home for dinner. I don't care. What I do care about is what's right for the people that don't have a voice. Those poor people who don't have a voice, they don't have a fighting chance because they don't have money and they don't know people of influence. And that's sad in Romania. Romania has too much potential to be dragged down by fraud, corruption, and thugs like the ones who tried to squeeze this poor lady who was there to help bruise and batter and abuse. For example, if a woman is in an abusive marriage or marital relationship, they can go to her for shelter, and she gets funds from churches and other donations. And the thugs came to take her money, and she had no place to turn. You know what? The piss poor leadership in Romania, this is making me angry. The piss poor leadership in Romania just shrugged. What the hell are we doing? And then what are the Americans doing? Maybe they're beginning to shrug. So when you want to come up with viable solutions, I hate to give an emotional reaction like this, but right is right, wrong is wrong. That poor lady had no one to turn to. Are you kidding me? So when you want to sling mud and cast doubt towards me, you go tell that lady what kind of leader you are. No, you're a thug if you're not in there doing your job and locking up those people. They should have been locked up immediately. The poor lady had no place to turn. You know what? The Romanians and the Americans are doing the shrug. So if you want to try to come after me and say that I'm some disgruntled former employee, do your job. Do your job, hold people accountable, and bring the rule of law and help these poor people who don't have a voice. That's where leadership comes in. And you give an empty answer, oh, he doesn't work here anymore. That is so, drain the swamp. Let's be frank about it. Drain the swamp, because don't make any more excuses. If it makes you feel good and blaming Darren White because you're a miserable, incompetent failure, then do that. But drain the swamp, get them out of there, and get some real leadership in there. That's what we need. Hold the Remainers accountable. And it's going to be a tough uphill battle because corruption and fraud is so deeply rooted there. It's going to take a long process. It can be done with determined effort, determined pressure, and rock solid leadership. And it can be done. It can be done with the right leadership and with the right determination, holding people accountable, and you're not going to make friends along the way. But you got to be prepared to do that. I know that I'm going to get criticism from this interview. That's fine. But the ones that are criticizing, I guarantee you, they're not bringing any solutions. They're good at slinging mud and casting doubt, but when you ask them for solutions, they'll give you a shrug. So that means that the only thing they bring to the table is slinging mud and casting doubt, because there'll be plenty of people across Romania to say mean and untrue things about me. Go ahead. Are you helping the poor people in Romania? Are you bringing solutions to the table? Absolutely not. Bring them. And you know what? If there's anything I can do, I'm willing to do it. So I'm not just saying this from the sidelines. If I have a role to play that's going to be beneficial to the people in Romania who don't have a voice, I'm happy to do it. So let's not just kind of put me in a pocket or put me in a corner to say, oh, he's just in America sitting around doing nothing and criticizing people. No. If I'm afforded the opportunity to come in and make a difference, I won't be sitting on the sidelines, and I guarantee you I won't be struggling. We're going to be holding people accountable and doing what's right by the voiceless people, which is about 85% of the population of Romania. About 85% of the poor Romanian people have no voice. They don't have a chance. And the rest of the people that are making all these decisions are sitting by the pool at the country club at Sajardi. That's wrong. So all these people that's going to line up to criticize me, ask them. Please ask them, what are you bringing? What are you bringing to the table? They're not going to give you an interview because they'll throw rocks and run.
So you need an explanation from them.
No, I don't need their explanation because it's going to be empty. They'll say I don't work there anymore. That's empty.
Okay.
That's irresponsible. And the same thing with the Romanians.
a solid
what,
explanation, actually.
there is no, the explanation is a complete failure. That's the explanation. And I hate to be very, well, I don't hate it. I'm very direct. And if it hurts people's feelings, that means I hurt your feelings with the truth. Don't don't make some empty excuse to say, oh, well, he's not employed here anymore. That's not an answer. That's not an answer to your failures.
Yeah.
So when you see those poor people who are struggling, they're going to go, oh, Darren White doesn't work here anymore. That is not an answer. Get off your rear end and go make a difference. So,
Mr. White, recently in Romania have appeared some photos with you and Laura Codruța-Kövesi.
yes.
Can you tell us how well do you know Mrs. Laura Codruța-Kövesi, and how do you assess the job she is doing at the National Anti-Corruption Directorate?
Excuse me. I saw the photos. In Romania, people like to take stuff and run with it and spread gossip and rumors. Kövesi and I worked together probably more than any other law enforcement entity throughout the embassy. And it goes back to what I said earlier. You can't get stuff done by sitting in the embassy reading a book on theories. You got to go out and meet people. You notice you didn't see any photos with Kövesi of any other law enforcement entities in the entire embassy. You saw me. You saw me for a reason. It's my job to get to know her and other key players throughout Romania. That's why you saw me with her in Constanța, in Brașov, in Timișoara, and any other place that I thought would make a difference. So don't be sitting in the embassy hoping that things are going to change. If people draw conclusions from photos, those are professional. And there's not one person who can come forward with any ounce of truth to say anything other than it was professional. It's probably not even good for me to comment because it gives it a little bit more steam. There's nothing there other than strictly professional. We didn't always agree. That's because I'm honest. And I'm going to be honest with people. When I don't agree with them, I'm going to tell you right to your face, I don't agree with you. So it's my job to do joint professional missions with her. She spoke at most, if not all, of our cybercrime conferences throughout Romania. We did many, countless cybercrime conferences to train judges, prosecutors, police. Despite the rampant corruption, we brought in, I told you, those other entities, and having her on board, the chief of the Romanian National Police. I don't want to get into names, but judges.
So you've got together some important key players.
Yes.
For them to train them and to improve all this.
And we brought in over 200 judges to Interviu under the direction of a major supporter, Florin Incescu. I said I wouldn't get into names, but I have to say that he's a key player. And he was our voice to the Romanian judges. So that's why you see me with Kövesi and others, because we need to make a difference. You can't make a difference by sitting on your rear end somewhere hoping that things are going to be right or shrugging. So we can't be no, we're not doing that. We're out there actively trying. You notice you didn't see her with anybody else. Raise that question. Why were you not seen with her? Why were you not out actively making a difference? We flew to the United States. Kövesi, myself, and her team. We met with the American Attorney General. We met with the Director of the Secret Service. We met with members on Capitol Hill. Bringing this coalition together, making a difference. You don't do that by shrugging. You don't do that by sitting around criticizing people, saying he doesn't work here anymore. That's dumb. So we do it because it's the right thing to do, and it points us in the right direction towards progress and to helping those people who don't have a voice, and to impact the crimes that are going on in Romania, and coming together and coming up with solutions.
So, in your opinion, there been any positive results after all this?
We made some positive gains because we brought people together. We brought in training, we brought in equipment, we brought in corporate partners, but
they put it into action, or they've learned? And
well, We made some baby steps. You got to remember something. It's not going to change overnight. It's sort of like the crawl, walk, run theory. And you build on the progress that you make. But the Romanians got to do their part. Stop making excuses and blaming the parliament. Oh, the parliament won't let us take their bank accounts. The parliament won't let us take their cash flow. We got to knock that off because we know that's not the truth. Because, well, I don't want to be negative. We got to knock that off and be honest with each other. And let's move forward with progress. So when you see me out with Kaveshi, it's my job to be out with Kaveshi, making a difference. So let the photos come, and instead of being honest and saying, hey, this is what he's supposed to do, this is his job, they'll try to spin it into rumors about a personal relationship or something. It's not my job to be in a personal relationship with somebody there.
That was just an official meeting there. No.
It's my job to be involved with the people who are key players. I can't do that by sitting in the embassy.
Yes.
So there you go.
Anyway, the Americans are more open, then that is nothing wrong to meet and talk. And
Why would it be something wrong? If Romanians see it as something wrong, then I can't tell them what's right or wrong, but my way of leadership is going to be done the way I want it done. I don't have to get approval from some critic in Romania. I'm going to do it my way, and that's just the way it is. So I don't try to tell them how to write a speech for their address to the parliament. So don't tell me how to run my office.
Thank you. Mr. White, do you think maybe in the future you will be personally involved in some way in addressing the corruption issue in Romania? If you will have the chance?
I hope. My hope is that I will be afforded an opportunity to make a difference, to bring strong, determined leadership that's going to make a difference instead of standing on the sidelines shrugging and saying that he doesn't work here anymore. Do your job. Do what's right by the people of Romania. Do what you're paid to do by the American government. And stop standing on the sidelines and not being a strong leader. I don't think that you can teach leadership. I think leaders are born. And so, once again, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. We don't have time for people making excuses for failure. Let's go. Part of that is draining the swamp. So, there you go. No excuses. Don't blame somebody else because you failed.
Yes, you've liked a lot Romania because you have in your house a lot of Romanian symbols, and
I even have
you've liked it a lot. Our tradition. And,
the Romanian tradition. I had Treba de fasole cu cilan for dinner last night, and in my house, you can find palinka from Zalo. Of course, there's footprints of Romania throughout my house. I enjoyed my time there, and I want to make a difference.
You are very close.
Romania is near and dear to my heart. It was my home for 5 years, and you can't ignore that. And you know what? If I didn't care, I wouldn't be so animated about fighting for people's rights in Romania. I'm sitting comfortably in America right now. Why not just stay here and enjoy life? No, I think that it's, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. Therefore, sitting on the sidelines and being critical, or can you offer something that's going to be substantive for the way forward and the way to progress? So don't just sit on the sidelines and say, well, look how bad it is in Romania. I care about what goes on in Romania, and I know that there's an enormous potential, not just from a business standpoint or a military standpoint, political standpoint. There's a multitude of reasons why Romania needs to get better. Romania needs to stamp out that fraud and corruption because it's dragging it down. And there's a way out with the right leadership. And it's going to take time. It's going to be a drawn-out process, but under the correct leadership, with the right plan, with the right people, competent people. We're not going to sit around and read a book about Romania. It could be done.
Mr. White, you made a statement a year ago in an interview for Mr. Robert Ducescu, saying that Romanian intelligence service and external intelligence service are often used for political purposes and not to do what they have to do according with their duties and responsibilities.
Mhm.
We want to know your opinion about these two services. Can you explain more your statement?
Yes, I'll be very brief because I know this has been running for some time now, this interview. But unfortunately, the political leaders in Romania, they use their intelligence services for uh, purposes other than what it's designed for. Specifically, what I mean is the police and intelligence services in Romania are too often used for political gain. In other words, instead of keeping the Romanian citizens safe from terror and other threats, they're out spying on political opponents. That is not the design for these entities. In other words, they're used to uh, go after their political opponents. And so instead of protecting the Romanian citizens, they're out spying on a political adversary, trying to get dirt, trying to obtain something that'll take that political person down. That's wrong, and it's an injustice to the um, Romanian people. It's an abuse of taxpayer money, and it has to stop. But that's part of that corrupt system. It's against the law. It's wrong. It's corrupt, and you're failing the Romanian citizens because they deserve the protection that these police and intelligence services provide. But if you're spying on a political opponent instead of watching terrorists, that's leaving Romania vulnerable. And once again, you go back to that shrug. We can't be shrug. There's no shrug in here. You better hold these people accountable. So the Americans share responsibility for that. They share the blame for that because they know it's happening, and we're not doing anything about it. You don't leave Romanian citizens vulnerable because you're sending out the intelligence service to collect dirt on a political opponent. Meanwhile, your borders are left uncovered. That's wrong, and it's an injustice, and in my opinion, it's a criminal act because you're endangering innocent, vulnerable Romanian citizens for political gain. Once again, you're part of the problem or you're part of the solution. There's no shrugging and there is no sitting in that embassy just hoping that things are going to go well for you. No.
So, in your opinion, every institution just have to respect their
They need to be held accountable.
responsibilities.
They need to be held accountable. And if they get caught doing that, they need to go to jail.
Yes,
Period.
yes.
Let's be frank about it. You know what? The leadership of Romania and leadership in that embassy in Romania, they don't have any, they'll just sit back and they'll just shrug because they're in the shrugging business.
Okay. Mr. White, at this moment in Romania, there is a huge scandal caused by the former deputy Sebastian Ghiță, talking about the high level of corruption in Romania, stating also that Mrs. Laura Codruța Kövesi it is directly involved in this corrupt system. Can you say something about this statement?
I can make a general statement. I don't know the specifics about Kövesi and Ghiță. What I do know is that corruption is taking Romania into a dark place. Without leadership from the Americans and without holding the Romanians accountable, that should not surprise anybody about corruption at the highest levels. Once again, we got this vicious cycle where you're continuously having people get arrested, and you know what? It shakes the confidence that the international community will have in Romania, because scandal after scandal, arrest, fraud, scandal after scandal after scandal. And you know what? Remember, those are retaliatory arrests. Those aren't law enforcement bringing justice for all. That's selective enforcement to go after the people who are getting out of line. And so, let's be honest, let's be fair. Go after everybody and partner up with your international partners, and you'll have what's called a force multiplier, where you'll have a bigger force of enforcement to hold these people accountable. Don't complain about not having the resources when you have international partners ready to help you, But you don't want to accept that help because then you'll end up arresting your friends and cutting your cash flow.
So, in your opinion, Romanian institutions refuse to get help from the
They don't
outside
want
of
the
the
help.
country because they want to.
They
They
want to.
try to cover up some interest, some personal interests.
That's pretty obvious. They're not going to
Yes.
cut their cash flow because if they do law enforcement across the board like they should, a lot of people would be brought to justice and it would cut cash flow to too many people. So they're not going to accept help that's going to cut their cash flow. That's part of the problem.
Mr. White, in your opinion, U.S. authorities have responsibility for what is happening in Romania? And also, does the binomial system, Romanian Intelligence Service, and the National Anti-Corruption Directorate had the blessing, the approval from the Washington, D.C.?
That I don't know. I just know that people need to step up and lead and hold Romania accountable. Use every ounce of influence you have with our international partners to hold Romania accountable and stop letting their friends get away with every crime you can think of. Cut the cash flow to those people who are taking money, to include but not limited to parliament, judges, prosecutors, police. You can't have confidence from the international community when you know all that stuff is going on. America needs to reach out to its partners in the region. Say, hey, look, let's come together, and let's come together with a viable plan that's going to hold Romania accountable. Otherwise, you're going to have the criminals policing the criminals. That ain't working. That's why that explains partly why we are where we are in Romania. Can't stand on the sideline and shrug. That ain't going to help. You can't say he doesn't work here anymore. That's not going to help. Come together with some viable solutions and lead by example.
Mr. White, in the past, a year ago, do you have you've told us about some institutional abuses made in Romania. Do you have any concrete facts regarding abuses made by the Romanian prosecutors, for example, or some other institutions?
In general,
Yes.
I can say it's not fair for people who don't have money and influence. They don't have a voice. So that in and of itself will tell you that there's plenty of injustice going on because the wealthy people who have stolen the most money get the best treatment. Does that sound like democracy and justice for all? No. So in a general sense, we know that it's not working. It's not working for the masses. It's not working for those 85% that are poor. And then the wealthy, super rich criminals get a tap on the wrist. Worst case, they go to jail to have a cup of coffee. They're back out doing what they still do. So there are no consequences for their actions, and they know that.
I understand.
And you have people standing on the sidelines, shrugging and reading a book. That's not part of the solution. That's part of the problem.
Yes. Oh, Mr. White, these were all the questions. We want to thank you very much for this interview. It means a lot for us. So thank you again.
You're very welcome. Thank you.